welcome and salutations to Den of Otaku, Den of Geek's official anime discussion series, where we break down all things anime, Japanese pop culture, and basically just all the biggest developments going on in the industry. I am your host, Daniel Kurland, and in this episode, boy, oh boy, guys, do we have a lot going on. First of all, we're going to talk about Akira Toriyama's legacy, we're going to talk about the Sentai and Tokusatsu genres, the Kaiju genre, we're going to talk about Warner Brothers Japan and what they're doing in the anime industry, and of course, we've got new installments of Release the Hounds and the Big Three coming at you. So, first of all, I would like to talk about Akira Toriyama. He's the creator of Dragon Ball, but he did so much more than that, and sadly, he passed away in March of this year, and his death has kind of had huge ripple effects, not just in Japan, in the anime industry, but internationally, and he was such an important storyteller that I thought it would be important to just shine a light on some things you might have not known about him, his influences, and just the mark he's left on the world of animation at large. So, to begin with, Akira Toriyama, he's kind of seen as Japan's Walt Disney or Stan Lee, like that's the level of prolificness that he's brought to the table. He himself was inspired by Osamu Tezuka of Astro Boy fame, but also 101 Dalmatians from Walt Disney was a big inspiration for him. So it's kind of neat that he was someone that had international intentions going into things, like he wasn't just someone that only focused on other manga. Another influence that came to him is Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee films like Drunken Master and Enter the Dragon were big touchstones for kind of the stories he told. And even later on in life, he became really fascinated with science fiction, like Alien and even Galaxy Quest, the parody film, were really big influences on him. And if you look at some of his later work, like Jocko the Galactic Patrolman, that sci-fi riffing nature is very much front and center. So Dragon Ball is Akira Toriyama's biggest claim to fame, but he was creating stories for close to 50 years. Dr. Slump was kind of his first big series. It's about like a girl robot named Arale who just gets into hijinks in Penguin Village with her like scientist surrogate father figure, and Dr. Slump is like a gag comedy. It's really silly, it's fun, it's crossed over with Dragon Ball on a number of occasions, and even there's one of the best episodes of Dragon Ball Super, in my opinion, is an episode where Arale kind of invades the show and turns it into a stealth Dr. Slump episode. It's so silly, and Dr. Slump didn't necessarily, like, it had hundreds of episodes, but it didn't connect on a huge Dragon Ball level, and it would be really fascinating to see somebody take that show now and do more with it, whether they're adapting the manga or just telling new stories in that universe. But there's so much more that you could do with Dr. Slump, and it's just a really fun property. And some of the other series that Akira Toriyama made that were like one-shots or smaller things, he did a series called Pink, which is about like a barren wasteland where there's no water, and this thief named Pink is kind of stealing water from a corrupt military and giving it to the masses. This is obviously like a theme that Toriyama has returned to on more than one occasion. Sandland gets into the same material. He did another series called Kawa, which was about like a bunch of child monsters that are trying to get a medicine to cure their town of a deadly flu. Kajika is a story about this mischievous boy who kills an innocent fox and is cursed to be a fox, half-fox creature for 1,000 years, unless he can save 1,000 souls. And that gets into some really interesting ideas as well. There's another series called Go-Go Ackman, which is about just a demon who harvests souls. And what's interesting between all of these series, a through line that you might not recognize, is that they all speak to the idea that anyone can be a hero, especially these underdog, unexpected figures. And it's easy to forget that even like Dragon Ball was interested in that. When Dragon Ball started, it was just a story about like a weird boy with a monkey tail that's going from town to town helping people out. Like before Goku kind of became this invincible Superman-like figure, it was very much just it started with gay comedy influences. It was much more aligned with Dr. Slump before it became this action spectacle. And Toriyama was he really cared a lot about not taking his works too seriously, that nothing was too sacred. Like, even Dragon Ball, when it would get into death and, like, the end of the universe, it still would have a very lighthearted tone a lot of the time. And that's really important, and I think it's something that Toriyama really excelled at, and it's a fitting touchstone of his work, considering that he himself was kind of this innocuous gag comedy creator who became this prolific action shonen storyteller who influenced so many other people, like Naruto, Fairy Tail, One Piece, Bleach. None of these series would necessarily exist without the framework that Akira Toriyama established, and it's really special to see that someone who was just kind of having fun telling silly stories has forever changed the shonen genre and will not be forgotten. Like, it's really been touching to see how many people have celebrated his life after his passing. Like, there was a worldwide, like, spirit bomb celebration where everyone was raising their hands, donating energy to him. Toonami did a big tribute to Akira Toriyama, and Toonami, like, is Cartoon Network's anime programming block, and Dragon Ball wasn't their only show, but, like, Dragon Ball really helped put Toonami on the map, which in turn helped bring a lot of other anime series to North America, like Gundam Wing and just so many other shows. So without Dragon Ball, even when Dragon Ball was done telling new stories, it was still one of the top rated shows on Toonami. It really helped that block survive and persevere over time. And Toriyama, too, he even did a lot of work in video games. Like, he designed the characters in Chrono Trigger, Blue Dragon, Dragon Quest, and so it's interesting, like Ben Schwartz, for instance, someone from, like, Parks and Rec, a real comedian, like the new voice of Sonic the Hedgehog, he posted this big tribute to Akira Toriyama because he was a big Chrono Trigger fan, and so it's really been touching to see that Toriyama's death has moved a lot of people that might have not even been anime and manga fans, that there's a whole video game crowd that he affected and has just really touched with the work that he's done. And it's going to be really interesting to see what happens to Dragon Ball now that Toriyama's out of the picture. Toyotaro is going to continue the series on, but it's unclear if it's going to run indefinitely or if he's just going to kind of wrap up the existing plot threads that Toriyama set up. And it's just the true loss of a legend. Like, I remember running around my backyard with my brother trying to do Kamehamehas, or truly believing that we could conjure ki and become a Super Saiyan, and I don't think this was an experience that was unique to us. Like, kids all over the world were doing this, and it's just really special that someone like Akira Toriyama could make us believe to that degree, that he would tell these great stories, but at the end of the day, he was really just inspiring people to think that they could do unbelievable things. And that's such a special trait that sometimes gets lost in anime, in manga, and he was just one of a kind, and the industry is definitely feeling his loss, but it will be very exciting to see what comes next, and if people can pick up that mantle, and how the world will get by without Akira Toriyama in it anymore. So, Akira Toriyama, thank you for everything you've done. You are truly one of the greats. To shift gears a little bit, I'd like to talk about the Sentai and Tokusatsu genre. These are basically like big action, explosive spectacles, like shows like Power Rangers, Ultraman, Kamen Rider. Like, Power Rangers is known as Super Sentai in Japan, and these shows have been popular for a long time. They've been omnipresent in Japan, but they've made their way to international audiences too. And we've had so much of those things that you're now starting to see a subversion of that genre. I mean, even Toriyama played around with the Sentai genre with its great Saiyaman character, who's very much riffing on the whole street-level superhero kind of thing in some really fun ways. We had, like, the recent Power Rangers movie that was kind of like a grittier reboot of it. You couldn't do a movie like that without decades of existing Sentai material being out there. There's, like, an upcoming Ninja Turtles movie that's called The Last Ronin and is like an adult, dark Ninja Turtle story. That's something else that you couldn't do if you didn't have years and years of Ninja Turtle stories that kind of set a baseline. And so there's a new anime that's just come out called Go-Go Loser Ranger that has taken that Sentai Tokusatsu template and really done something exciting and different with it. Basically, it's like if you took Power Rangers and told it from the perspective of the Putties, or if you did Ninja Turtles, but not even from the perspective of Shredder, but from the perspective of the Foot Soldiers. So what's going on in this show is that you have like a Power Rangers group known as the Dragon Keepers. They came to Earth, they wiped out the villains, and there's been decades of peace. And what's happened is that the Dragon Keepers have forced the remaining foot soldiers on the planet to just basically do, through indentured servitude, stage shows of their loss to the heroes. Like, you know, when you go to like Disney World and they've the Indiana Jones stage show, like basically that, but them needing to continually show the public that they're always going to lose to the heroes as a way of entertainment. They're turning their loss into entertainment. And what Go-Go Loser Ranger does is it follows these foot soldiers, specifically one, Fighter D. Doesn't even have a name. He's just Fighter D, which is also such a fun part of this show. And it shows you that these foot soldiers are kind of fed up, that what they've been forced into is basically a form of slavery. And so this Fighter D wants to infiltrate the Dragon Keepers and take them down from the inside. And this is such a fun idea that really got my attention, because it, for one, shows you that villains and heroes are not just black and white paradigms, that this Fighter D has maybe been caught up in something bigger than he understands, and that he's not truly evil, he's just been conditioned to work in this destructive template. And you have the same thing with heroes, that like a level of complacency can build if someone is always a hero and just expects to be praised by the public and is always getting things their ways. It's kind of like if you did an Avengers story so far down the line that someone like Tony Stark is just expecting to be praised, or that because he's doing something, it's the right thing because he's the hero. Go-Go Loser Ranger really challenges those ideas and shows that heroes can come corrupt with that power, that not being challenged isn't always a good thing, and it really makes you rethink those social standings and what's possible in both a hero and a villain. It's like Marvel also has a property called Damage Control, which is just like looking at the cleanup crews of big events. This feels a lot like that in the sense that it establishes a huge heroic world, but you're just following people on like the bottom rung of power. These are the most disenfranchised of the lot, and it's a really fun idea. It's come from Keiichi Sato, who has routinely kind of mixed up both Sentai and mecha genres in fun ways. Like his biggest claim to fame is Big O, which is kind of like a film noir Batman mecha show with like a lot of German expressionism thrown into. It's really different and fun, but I think like Go-Go Loser Ranger is destined to kind of be his biggest show. It's come along at the perfect time, and it's really exploring different and exciting themes that are relevant, and I hope it triggers more of these kind of stories, that we're not just seeing revisionist Power Rangers or Ninja Turtle stories, but more shows that really challenge those established genres and show what else can be done in it now that we're familiar with the norm. So Go-Go Loser Ranger, it's streaming right now, and it's a really fun, different show. And kind of building off of that, another genre that's been really popular lately is kaiju stories. So, I mean, kaiju are giant monsters, like think Godzilla, think King Kong. These have been around forever. Godzilla's just celebrating its 70th anniversary. Kaiju stuff has always been big in Japan, but it's really exciting to see it connect on an international level. Like, we just had Godzilla -1 win an Academy Award, which is bonkers and so exciting. We have Godzilla X Kong, Godzilla Kong, having one of the highest openings of a MonsterVerse movie. So clearly these stories aren't going anywhere. People are only more interested in them. And it's been interesting to see what's going on with the kaiju genre, specifically in anime. Like, there's been Godzilla animes before. There's Godzilla Planet of the Monsters, Godzilla Singular Point, Gamera Rebirth. You could even say something like One Punch Man, Attack on Titan, Tokyo Ghoul. Those are not conventional kaiju shows, but they deal with these larger-than-life monster spectacles, which are very much cut from the same cloth. And, I mean, there's even something called Chibi Godzilla Raids Again, which was released for Godzilla's 65th anniversary. And it's like a cute, kid-friendly Godzilla show. You have an island with a chibi version of Godzilla, Mothra, Mechagodzilla, Rodan. What's really interesting about that is the second season of Godzilla Raids Again was just made free and available for the public on Godzilla's official YouTube channel. That wasn't done for the show's first season, so the fact that this is going on now kind of speaks to the point that these people know that kaiju content is big and the biggest it's ever been, and that people just want to consume as much of it as possible. So much in the same vein as Go-Go Loser Ranger, there's a new anime called Kaiju No. 8 that's taking these established kaiju staples and really doing something different and new with it. So in Kaiju No. 8, it's set in a world where kaiju attacks are just par for the course, especially in Japan. They're basically like natural disasters. So kaijus are attacking all the time. There's an ambivalence towards them. It's basically like if an earthquake was going on, or even just like a thunderstorm to some degree. And so there's an anti-kaiju defense force that's out there that just deal with these kaiju attacks. And I mean, there's some really cool things going on there, like how the kaiju defense force have suits of armor that are made out of like kaiju remains to give them kind of bolstered powers. That's such a cool idea that I've never seen something like that before. But there's also a cleanup crew, because it explores the idea that after you kill a huge monster, there's just a huge corpse in the city. And that's something I haven't really seen explored before. You don't see that at the end of Godzilla. You don't see that at the end of King Kong. So in Kaiju No. 8, the show's main character, Kafka, which is not a coincidence for his name, he wants to be on the Kaiju Defense Force. He made a pledge to his best childhood friend that they would both be on the Kaiju Defense Force together, but he continually fails the exam, and he's stuck on this cleanup crew. So he's doing this grunt work to just dispose of remains. He's sawing intestines, he's spraying down blood, and he's accepted this lot for himself, but he's kind of frustrated with this work he's doing that doesn't let him be the hero he wants to be. One evening, Kafka accidentally ingests a kaiju that turns him into a kaiju and gives him kaiju powers, and now that he's suddenly stronger, Kafka is able to join the Kaiju Defense Force and fight and be as strong as he's always wanted to be. However, this raises an issue because he is now technically the monster that him and his peers are fighting. So it gets into some really compelling material that it's not just an action show, it's not just a kaiju show. There's a mystery element that he has to hide his secret identity and kind of argue that maybe all kaiju aren't bad necessarily. If he can be a kaiju and he can use his power for good and to take down other kaiju, maybe he's not unique in that sense. And I mean, there are other shows like Tokyo Ghoul and Attack on Titan, they both deal with that, but not as overtly as Kaiju No. 8 does. And this, once again, is just taking something as established as the kaiju genre and really going to fun new places that wouldn't be possible if we just weren't indoctrinated with decades of these stories. And Kaiju No. 8 is simultaneously streaming on Crunchyroll as it airs in Japan. That's never been done before. We've had very quick simultaneous releases, even with English dubs, but the fact that this is airing directly at the same time as it is in Japan really speaks to how they're viewing it as one of the biggest anime to come out, that they know that people want new kaiju content, and it's just really optimistic for what's ahead, not only for Kaiju No. 8, but just a new decade of subversive kaiju stories. So Kaiju No. 8, it's really doing fun, different things. It just started airing, so you can get in on the ground level, and it's a really fun show whether you like kaiju series or not. And to kind of piggyback off of that, the company that puts out Godzilla and King Kong is Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers is doing something very interesting with anime right now. Warner Brothers has a studio called Warner Brothers Japan. They've been around since 2011. And basically, they focus on anime. They've put out 80 anime since their inception, stuff that includes JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Food Wars, Spy Family, Is It Wrong to Try to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon? And basically, they've announced that moving forward, they're going to make 10 anime a year, which is a lot more than what they've been doing in the past. And it's always very exciting when a new voice in the anime industry asserts itself, but there are some really exciting implications for what Warner Brothers Japan could do. Two of the shows that have been announced is a remake of Fist of the North Star, which is kind of a very classic action series. It's been long overdue for a remake, so that's quite exciting. But their other show that they've announced is Suicide Squad Isekai, which is basically taking Joker, Harley Quinn, the Suicide Crew, and putting them in a new fantasy world. We've talked about it before on Den of Otaku. By the way, Isekai was just added to the dictionary, which is really cool. It's nuts that ain't, I don't think, is in the dictionary, but Isekai is. It's kind of just, again, reflecting how mainstream this stuff is becoming. So Warner Brothers Japan, they've kind of kept it close to the chest what they'll be putting out, and it's unclear if it's kind of just going to be original series that are more disposable in nature, but they have the potential to do more stuff like Suicide Squad Isekai that's specifically taking advantage of Warner Brothers IP and giving it an anime makeover. Like, it would be so cool to get an anime version of Mad Max. Like, that seems tailor-made for anime in a lot of ways. Even something like Tarzan, which can be hit or miss with its standard animation or live action stuff, could be a really fun, exciting anime series. Even something like Willy Wonka, which they've been really trying to turn into a franchise of sorts. Willy Wonka could be a great anime. Like, it could be a magical girl show, it could be like a slice of life thing. There's a lot of potential with what's going on here, and Warner Brothers Japan has the opportunity to do some really interesting stuff. Like, even if you just think of Space Jam, like Space Jam: A New Legacy, which, not a good film by any metric, but it kind of is anime coded. Like, the idea of bringing real life people and a bunch of Warner Brothers IPs into a new fantasy world together is isekai. That's exactly what's going on there. So whether you got like a Space Jam anime or just an anime that's doing the same thing Space Jam is by taking a lot of different series, putting them all together, that's really cool. So this is still in development. As we find out more of what Warner Brothers Japan is doing, we'll definitely tell you about it, but it's just exciting. Like, Warner Brothers has been slashing and cutting so much, they're outright deleting films from being released, so the fact that anime isn't something that's just being maintained, but is actually thriving under Warner Brothers is really telling that they see a future in it, that they think it's exciting, and that it's something that they really want to support at a time when so much is being cut down. Do you hear that? No, that's not the sound of a kaiju roar. That's actually the next installment of Release the Hounds. Release the Hounds, guys. You love it. I love it. For those of you who don't know what Release the Hounds is, it's basically our physical media segment. Physical media, before we had streaming, algorithms, Zaslavs. Physical media was an important way to collect and watch material. It's still really big in anime. There are some series that aren't streaming anywhere and you can just get them on physical media. There are other shows that are out of print and you can only get them on physical media. Some shows that haven't been remastered until they're put out on physical media. And so in Release the Hounds, we just kind of highlight some recent or upcoming physical media anime releases that are worth checking out. So the first thing we have is The Great Pretender, the complete series on Blu-ray. This came out on March 12th. The Great Pretender is a heist show. The heist genre is just so fun to me. You get a lot of anime that are crime shows, detective shows, but the heist genre is still kind of, it doesn't get enough attention, and you can do so much with like a fun, capery heist. And so The Great Pretender takes a Japanese con man, puts him together with some other criminals, and they just get into like these really electric heists. There were 23 episodes, but they're split up into 4 larger cases, so it's not just a procedural thing that resets at the end of each episode. You actually get a chance to see these stories build and grow and play out over like 4 or 5 episodes each. Great Pretender is done by Wit Studio, who did like the start of Attack on Titan, Ranking of Kings. They just do beautiful work all the time, and that's no exception in The Great Pretender. It looks really cute and like colorful, but they do get into more mature and adult material. Like, some of the heists involve human trafficking, like children human trafficking, so it's not afraid to get into more mature storylines either. And it's just so fun. Like, if you like a good mystery and crime stuff, The Great Pretender is a really fun way to go. The music is great. there's Queen. They have Queen music in it, so like that's pretty rare for anime. So once again, The Great Pretender, the complete series on Blu-ray. A movie just came out, so this is a great way if you're interested in the movie to get caught up beforehand. If you saw the movie and liked it, the series gives you more of the same. That's really fun. The Great Pretender. The next series we'd like to focus on is Urusei Yatsura, Seasons 1 and 2 on Blu-ray, which came out March 19th. Urusei Yatsura is done by Rumiko Takahashi, who is a revered mangaka. She did Ranma 1/2, Inuyasha, Mermaid Saga. This show's about a juvenile delinquent named Ataru who unintentionally becomes betrothed to an alien. It's really, really silly. It started as an 80s show. This is the 2022 reboot. It's one of the better reboot remakes I've seen of a series that really captures the energy of the original, but just looks gorgeous. It's such a fun show. Like, it does a really good job of world building and fleshing out its characters. There are some episodes that fully don't feature Ataru or Lum, the alien, and it just has a confidence in its cast. Like, it really knows how to flesh something out and have fun with a world. This has 23 episodes, which are essentially the first 2 seasons. Some don't consider those to be seasons, but it's like the first chunk of the show. It's really good. The 1980s Urusei Yatsura just started streaming on Crunchyroll, so if you've been watching that and want to see like a more updated version of it, you can get this Blu-ray. If you have seen the new version and want to check out the old one, you can go to Crunchyroll and watch the original. But it's just such a fun, playful, hilarious show. Like, it really, really makes me laugh, and that's not an easy thing to do, necessarily. So, Urusei Yatsura, Seasons 1 and 2, on Blu-ray, March 19th. And the final show for Release the Hounds we'd like to focus on is Berserk, the complete 1997 series on Blu-ray. This was released on March 26th. Berserk is kind of like the prototypical dark fantasy show. It's a manga by Kentaro Miura, who has such stunning artwork. It's incredibly meticulous and detailed, and one of the biggest problems with Berserk anime is they just can't capture that same energy in the anime. It's a real struggle, and this isn't common with a lot of shows, but Miura's artwork is just so impressive. It's not something that can really easily translate to animation. The 1997 show, while it is an anime from the 90s, is the best version of this. It really gets close to capturing his artwork. This dark fantasy focuses on Guts. He's a sword fighter who has a huge blade, a blade that's so it borders on parody, like it makes Cloud's sword from Final Fantasy look like a butter knife in comparison. He had a partner named Griffith who turns to the dark side, kills a bunch of their teammates in exchange to become a demon lord. The show kind of gets into Guts and Griffith's just rivalry, and if they'll meet again, and the adventures that they get into along the way. It does a really good job of truly being a dark fantasy. Like, there are things like fairies on the show, but the demons are just so malevolent and awful, and it really, like, gets uncomfortable a lot of the time. So this has been a really popular show, but this is the first time it's been available on Blu-ray, and it's truly a show that benefits from this remastered high-definition treatment. It's never looked better, so if you've been on the fence about checking out the 97 Berserk anime, this is the way to do it. It has the original Japanese, it has the English dub, which is really kind of an important English dub that made waves for a lot of other shows. So yeah, check it out. Once again, for Release the Hounds, we have The Great Pretender, the complete series on Blu-ray, Urusei Yatsura, Seasons 1 and 2 on Blu-ray, and Berserk, the complete 1997 series on Blu-ray. And before we go, guys, we have one more segment to give you all. It is the Big Three. Big Three, for those of you that don't know, it's just there's so much anime out there. New stuff, old stuff. It's easy for shows to slip through the cracks and just kind of not get the attention they deserve. So in the Big Three, we shine a light on just some of these shows, whether they're old or new, that couldn't fit into the main feed, but are still deserving of attention and stuff that we think you would like. So the first show we have on the Big Three here is Sandland, the series. Sandland was an Akira Toriyama show that really didn't get its due. It came and went. It's about like a Mad Max kind of wasteland that's been destroyed by war. People just want water, so a sheriff goes to kind of try to find a lost lake to give water to his people. He goes to the King of Demons for help. The King of Demons doesn't help him, but he says, my son will help. His son Beelzebub gets involved. There's a really fun buddy cop dynamic between Beelzebub and the sheriff. Beelzebub is just such a fun character, too. Like, he has a really chaotic energy. The show, though, looks great. It has the same, like, CG-esque anime style that was in Dragon Ball Superhero. I know CG anime can be a breaking point for some people, but this show really gets that divide right. It really looks good. There's really creative battle choreography. There's like really high-tech tanks that just show off really fun tech stuff, like for artillery nerds. There's a lot in there. And what's just so interesting is Sandland kind of came and went as a manga, but it's having a real renaissance right now. There is a movie, there's an upcoming like open world video game, and now there's this anime series that it's 13 episodes. The first 6 episodes adapt Toriyama's manga, but the following ones are an original story that Toriyama wrote for the anime. So in a lot of ways, it's one of the last things that Toriyama created, and it's really exciting in that sense that he was able to return to this world decades later, find new stories to say, and it's interesting to see what the next batch of episodes hold. Like, there's a lot of Dragon Ball Super crossover. There's angels involved that are pulled right out of Dragon Ball Super, and it just does such a good job with its world building. Really, really fun characters. And again, it's just exciting to see Sandland get this attention. It's unclear if it'll only be 13 episodes, if they'll continue to do more in this world, but it also just opens doors to get like proper anime adaptations out of Toriyama's other series. Like, you could get a Pink show, you could get a Kajika show, a Go-Go Ackman show. So hopefully Sandland is just the tip of the iceberg there. I mean, all of this was in production before Toriyama's passing, so it's not as if this is just a property that's trying to cash in on his passing. It was already going on, but it's found such an audience. It's streaming on Disney Plus and Hulu, oddly enough, and it's really resonating with audiences. So Sandland, watch Sandland. The next show we'd like to highlight is Mashle, Magic and Muscles. This show is basically like if Harry Potter met One Punch Man. It's set in a world where someone's worth is valued based on how much magical ability they have. And it follows a character named Mash who has no magical ability, but he wants his family to do well. He wants himself and his family to be perceived well by society. So he goes into the Easton Magical Academy to become a divine visionary, which is quite the challenge for him since he has no magical skills. He's strong, but he has no magical skills. There's a lot of anime that get into the whole, like, magical academy thing. There's Little Witch Academia, for instance. A lot of these shows, like, they're fine for me, but they haven't really gotten my attention. What's so fun about Mashle, though, is the way in which Mash uses his physical strength to rise over magical challenges. That's where the one punchness comes into it. Like, he kind of overpowers everyone just through brute strength. The second season of this show just finished, so the first season was good. It really sets in a strong framework, but now that both first and second seasons are out, you really get a more advanced picture of what's going on in the show. And again, as someone who's not always impressed by Magical Academy stuff, this one really feels different. It is hilarious. And it really finds a fun way to do a magic story that doesn't feel like every other magic story. So again, Mashle, Magic and Muscles. And the last show for the big three we'd like to highlight is Nintama Rantaro, sometimes called Ninja Boy Rantaro. This is one of the longest running anime series. There are over 2,300 episodes, so it's not something that you're just going to sit down and binge. It's a show about Rantaro in ninja school. It gets into his exploits in ninja school with his ninja friends, his ninja masters, other challengers. It skews very young. It's a silly, younger show. It's more playful than even something like Jubei-chan or Naruto. It's obviously nowhere the same as like Ninja Scroll, Ninja Kamui, Hell's Paradise, which are very adult ninja properties. What's fun about this show, though, is it's getting a new anime movie, the first one in 13 years. So this caught a lot of people by surprise. It's always interesting when an anime property that's kind of seen as dead or dormant turns out new content like this. So Nintama Rantaro's future could be really bright. There's a live-action anime movie that came out in 2011 by Takashi Miike called Ninja Kids, which is really fun. Like, check that out, too. You can find it online. And like I said, it does skew a little younger. It's really silly, but just check out a few episodes. Like, it's going to become relevant again because of this upcoming movie, but it's just something silly, fun, and really frivolous. Like, it's not serialized, so you can really just jump in at any point. And if you want something fun in the background, Nintama Rantaro's the show to do it. It's just silly ninja fun that doesn't take itself too seriously, and it's very much the kind of thing that like Akira Toriyama is going for in his gag comedy series. So once again, for the big three, we have Sandland the series, Mashle, Magic and Muscles, and Nintama Rantaro. And unfortunately, fellow otaku, that's all the time I have before I get isekai'd back to reality. We'd once again like to thank you for jumping in and sharing this journey with us. We'll see you next time, Space Cowboys.